What's up, guys? Anonymous writer Joey here. Unfortunately, Doruk couldn't make it to us for this big interview, but today we were able to grab a twice-published author living in Japan, P J Leonard. Why don't you introduce yourself?
Konbanwa? No, I actually from the UK originally, but yes, thank you, Joe. My name is P J Leonard. I'm originally from the British Isles, but I moved to Japan in 2010, and I live there by day, and I commute into Tokyo daily. And you can find me on a packed train, the most congested train line in Japan, tapping furiously on my phone, working on my next book. And yeah, as Joey mentioned, I've got 2 self-published books, which you can find on Amazon.com.co.uk, any of the dots really. And I am currently working on my 3rd book, hopefully going to be published in November this year. Thank you very much for having me, Joey.
Not a problem. All right, so the obvious question that a lot of people have is, how did you get started? Because a lot of people in the audience here do writing more for a hobby on the side that they hope that it can take off one day. So, how did you get into writing? How'd you get into the publishing?
Well, I first started writing back when I was back in primary school or elementary school, I suppose my friends over the pond would call it. Where now and then the schools would set like this kind of large term project at schools where they'd ask you to write 2 pages of a mini short story, and I'd usually end up annoying the teachers by writing like 10 pages or something stupid like that. I'd really go to town with it, because I'm a big fan of just like taking an idea and then just expanding it, just really making it maximize out and really getting a full immersive story out of it. And after a while, I just started to bloom these ideas in my head. And I started writing a full-fledged story when I was 16. And as it is, when you're that young and you write your first book, you look at it and you think, wow, I am holding gold in my hands right now. And I sent it out to a couple of agents. They immediately sent it back without even a letter. I should have taken that as a hint at the time. But after a while, I just started to really properly look into not just the raw ideas behind writing, but also some of the proper technicalities behind it. Some of the, what makes a good story, the 7-point story arc, creating good characters and antagonists and things like that. And it just started to swell from there. I really started to look into what constitutes good and bad storytelling, and that actually kind of was inconsequential to me moving to Japan, really. That's always just been a parallel interest moving to Japan. Although what did come out of Japan was a few other projects of writing, one of which I'll be talking about later. But yeah, that's how I started, just with a raw idea, really, and I just developed it into something a bit more developed and meaningful later on.
All right, so you talk about this early book you had when you were 16. What was that about?
Vegan. Not vegan. That was Vaygan. The book was ridiculously massive in scope. It was about a 16-year-old boy, because you write what you know, and basically he finds out that he is the reincarnation of a guardian of a planet in the galaxy Andromeda, and the planet, which has been peaceful and hasn't really needed its guardian since he passed away, is now at the brink of war, and they need their guardian to come back and save it. So he's whisked across the galaxy to kind of learn the ways of being the guardian. I got 2 books deep into it, which was about 200,000 words or something like that. I've looked back at it, and some of it I looked at it and I thought, yeah, that's really good. And then I read the next paragraph and I was like, I can see why I put this aside. I don't know, I might come back to it one day when I feel like I can really do the idea justice, but I think that book was the living definition of biting more off than I can chew. But after that, I moved into writing Tip, which I think was a bit more of a level-headed scope for my first proper novel, I think.
Alrighty. So speaking of Tick. Let's go into that for a little bit. What inspired you to write Tick?
Well, the two things really. When I used to work in there's like a bookstore chain in the UK called Waterstones, and I used to work in there. And while I was working in there, I became the events manager. So I kind of I didn't get paid more for it. They just put it on my job description. But they asked me to like try and lasso some authors into this shop, and it wasn't like a big Waterstones like any of the ones on like Oxford Street or New Street in Birmingham. It was a fairly small 2-floored shop really. But then I managed to make contact with an author called Erin Hunter, and Erin Hunter writes a series called Warriors, which is also called Warrior Cats in the UK. And of course, having managed to actually land an event with her, I went to do some research into the books, and I adore them. I thought they were absolutely fantastic. They kind of it's like a kind of a big Greek tragedy, really. They've got like a massive cast of characters, and they all keep dying, and they keep introducing new ones. So there's lots to go by. And while I was looking into the cat books, I was also working into a kind of a novel where I wanted to have a young man go on a redemption of sorts, find his humanity again. And I thought it was a pretty dull idea what I had originally. In fact, it was so dull I can't even remember it. But then I thought to myself, well, hang on. I want to make a book about someone regaining their humanity in a figurative sense. So what if they regain their humanity in a literal sense? What if I turn him into a cat? And that's what the concept of Tick is. It's a young, fairly unpleasant young man who gets turned into a cat, and he needs to literally and figuratively find his humanity again. So I kind of springboarded off of this idea from Warrior Cats and reading that, and kind of fused it into the idea that I had for Tick.
Oh, that's actually really interesting. That's one of the things we talked about for getting inspiration to write is looking at other works that you enjoy, that you like, and just trying to create a different sense of that. So that's definitely a cool angle to go off of, re-inspiring humanity by literally turning someone into a cat. That's definitely it's definitely a cool story. Have you read? There's a short story that also kind of reminds me of called Metamorphosis. Have you read that by chance?
Do you know what? I have not read that, and it sounds blasphemous to have not read the classic. And actually, there's been a couple of people who have read Tick and said, "Oh, it reminds me of Metamorphosis." Mm-hmm. And I know I should read it, Joey. I really should, but I haven't read it. But I know what the story is about. It's the gentleman that gets turned into a cockroach or something, isn't it?
Yes.
Yeah.
It does, and it's been so long since I've seen it that it goes. I don't remember if he turns back to a human or not. But I think the story from that and the story you described are very close and very similar. But you know, if your book is able to come across and remind people of such like a good short story, it's got to be that you wrote it well enough. You know, if people are coming and saying, you know, it reminds me of Metamorphosis in a way, then you know, you had to have caught gold with a little bit of the story there.
Yeah, we'll call it reverse inspiration. You make a book and it reminds you of something that you haven't read.
Or it brings back memories of a good story from somewhere else, which,
yeah,
I mean, if you're getting lost in the story, then if your readers are getting lost in the story, then you're doing something right.
Exactly. Yeah, it takes a special kind of writer to do that kind of thing. I mean, being able to get immersed in the story and not really kind of, I won't say not analysing it, because I think there is definitely value to looking into books and reading beyond it. I mean, the very point of Metamorphosis is the fact that it's a metaphor, really. But things like Enid Blyton, for example, I mean, I consumed Enid Blyton like a man starved when I was a kid. I mean, I adored her books, but have you picked up an Enid Blyton book lately, Joey?
I have not.
They don't read anything like you remember them as a kid. It just goes to show that there are some authors who just know how to switch on to their audience and really connect with them, and then when they move into like a different age range, it just doesn't work anymore. I think that's a very special kind of skill.
Mm-hmm. So you say you're self-published, right?
Yeah, I'm drinking tea. I live up to my stereotype, by the way. I'm from the UK and I've got to have my tea.
So, I was reading a little bit about how you published this first one. This was a Kickstarter, was it?
Yes.
You wanna go into a little bit of the story about that? Because I know there's a lot of people who are interested in publishing a book or publishing a short story or something like that, but they feel like intimidated about going through publishers, and some of them may have gone through that and may have been rejected, so they're looking at self-publishing. Maybe they know it's an option, maybe not, but you've obviously done it. You want to go through a little bit of that story and how it worked?
Sure. Well, the reason why I wanted to get a Kickstarter with Tick was, well, Tick was finished. I had it all complete. I had it edited to a point where I was satisfied with the end result. I mean, it's not been professionally edited, but as a self-published first book, I thought it was satisfactory. I found myself in a catch-22 because I wanted to get the book traditionally published, go through a publishing house or take it to a literary agent, and I was getting nothing back. And it wasn't like I wanted to skip through the traditional route of the mountain of rejection letters and stuff like that, but I felt like there's got to be a better way than this. There's got to be a way where I can break this catch-22 where you're not going to get published because you're an unknown name, and because you're an unknown name, you're going to get published. There's got to be a way to break that cycle. So I thought, well, let's put the whole traditional publishing on the back burner now. I do hope one day I can, get my book traditionally published and you can find it in a bookshop, in Barnes and Noble or in Waterstones in a book house at some point. Let's build a portfolio. So what I did was I went to Kickstarter and I put up my campaign that basically said, look, Tick's finished, the book's there, I'm asking for your help for building a marketing campaign. So I can get this not just onto the Amazon marketplace self-published. Actually getting the book self-published is free. You can do it through the Kindle program. But it's one thing just putting it out there, it's another thing putting it out there to a lot of fanfare and getting people to notice it. So I was asking people for their pledges so I can put together a marketing campaign. And by some miracle, I actually did manage to get my campaign together. And not only was I able to provide a route where you can buy the book as an actual hard copy through Lulu.com as well, but I was able to put together a website. I was able to put together the YouTube channel, get that kicked off. I was able to make videos. I was able to make mugs, because you've got to make a mug for something. And more than anything, more than just being able to give you the money to be able to put this stuff together, it just gave validation. I'm able to put this forward on my cover letters from now on and say, Tick is not just an unknown entity. It's not just self-published for its own sake. People want this. People who have put money towards a Kickstarter market for it, there's potential. So I'm just trying to build my portfolio up that way. So that way, when I approach a traditional agency or publishing house, I'm able to say, I'm not an unknown entity. I do have a viable market. That's the thing behind that. And I would, anyone who is trying to break that cycle, to do the exact same thing. Because, getting a Kickstarter is difficult to do, but once you do have that under your belt, it not just gives you a bit of financial backing, it gives you mental validation as well, and that's such a big thing to have.
Mm-hmm. Well, and obviously that, if the Kickstarter, if you have to get pledges from somewhere else, so there's got to be people who are interested in buying the book, interested in reading it as well. So, The Kickstarter obviously shows that, you know, you're building up an audience that wants to read your work. Well, the way you come out with it, whether it's the way you tell stories or the way you create a character or different scenarios or stuff like that. So, did you, with the Kickstarter, did you like let passages go? Like if you were contributing to the Kickstarter, did you let them read a little bit of Tick, or how did you get them? Because I know you say you have it, but did you have it published before you started the marketing campaign, or how did you get people to help you out, to back you with during the Kickstarter campaign?
I had samples available on my Kickstarter page right from the get-go, and anyone could look at those and pardon me, and kind of gauge whether it was something they was interested in. I didn't put everything behind certain paywalls and say you got to pay this much to look at this and blah blah blah. Just some elements. I'll get to that. But on the page, if I recall correctly, I had links to a YouTube video. That was, I think, the very first video that was ever on that YouTube channel. I think I set it up specifically just so I can link to the Kickstarter page. I had a short trailer, which I made in Windows Movie Maker. And I also had me doing an audiobook reading of Chapter 1 of Tick. So people were able to kind of listen and kind of get an idea of what Tick was about. And also just show them that there was actually something available. I wasn't just talking up a big game and just blowing steam, really. I did actually have a product to sell. But that being said, I did put something behind one of the pay levels. I think it was, if you backed up to a certain degree, I would not just give you just a hard copy of the book, but the hard copy would also involve a short story, which was a kind of a semi-sequel to Tick, called Trials of Midtale. So if people were really into this project, it made sense that I gave them something a little bit extra to the project. So I also gave them a 20,000 word mini sequel to the books that they can kind of dig into as well.
That's all right. That's definitely something unique. I think the audiobook idea for just Chapter 1 is actually a really cool idea. I don't know how this was published a long time ago. You said before you left for Japan in 2010, so this is back. I don't think audiobooks were a huge thing online at this point.
No, not. Yeah.
I don't know exactly when Audible.com became a thing, but that's actually a really cool idea. Did you notice where most of your Kickstarters came from? Were they from the UK? Were they from America? Were they from somewhere else?
You know what? To this day, I cannot fathom where they all came from. There was a mix. I mean, a couple of my friends backed it, but I think the majority of people came from the States, I think. And I also had a couple of very mysterious backers who didn't have a picture on their profile, didn't want any of the prizes, and despite the fact that they backed enough. In fact, one of them backed me for £100, and which would have qualified them for the highest tier easily, but they didn't want anything from me. So I got this very mysterious backer. So if they're listening, hello, thank you very much.
Yeah,
I think the majority stateside.
Because the one thing with that I think as someone from England, someone with that British accent that's not from the Northwest, you could definitely appeal to American audiences. A lot of British accents seem to catch on pretty well in America. So, have you created audiobooks for these as well, or are you just sticking with the hard copies?
Do you know what? I haven't made audiobooks for these books officially. Way back before the YouTube channel that it was officially launched back in November. I did actually make audio recordings for the books, and I posted them online, and they were watched by 2 people. It's because no one knew about it, understandably. I just put them up there. I didn't really have any concept of marketing myself. And then I kind of removed them all because I wasn't happy with the quality of them. But I would love to officially record proper audio, because I think I've got the equipment and the savvy to do that kind of thing now. But maybe one day in the future. I'm not sure if I'd be the right person for it, because I love reading my books, I love reading stories, but the hardest thing is just A, coming up with voices for your different characters, and B, remembering which characters do different voices. Because a number of times, Joey, I've had to stop my recording and say, hang on, did he have a Scottish accent or an Irish one? So that consistency is really tricky sometimes.
I mean, is your the other thing I would ask too is your book on Kindle, or is it just straight from Amazon?
I think it is Kindle. I think it's put on the Amazon Marketplace, but it is a Kindle ebook, I believe. Because I forget what the name of the program is, but I think it is a Kindle book. I'll be honest, I'm really bad at that kind of stuff. I think some of my friends have downloaded the book onto their Kindle, so I think compatibility-wise, I think it would work. Okay,
because I would say, obviously, if you have this, if you have this Kickstarter that helped out Tick really well, and you obviously published another one, which we'll go into after the break, but you've got this book published. I think the next step, I guess, if you think there's, if you want to build up the marketplace just a little bit more, would be that audiobook. Just finding a way to get that, and then kind of find a way to release that for a little nominal fee. I think I've seen podcasts that have a Patreon page. If you'd set something up with that, and then have access to audiobooks for all of your books that you've published, and maybe have short stories in there as well. Those could definitely be cool ideas, but we're running about halfway through here, so we still have some more things to go, so don't go anywhere. We'll be right back after this quick break.
Getting shorter, lack of energy I'll conquer. In my soul, this is real. These nights are getting shorter. In my soul, this is real.
Alrighty, we're back here with P J Leonard, twice published, self-published author, going on his third in November. So, after Tick, you've moved to Japan. How
Yep.
long was it until you published your second novel, Kami?
From moving to Japan to publishing Kami, let's see. Well, Kami was published in last year, actually, in September 2015. So I moved to Japan in March 2010, so over 5 years, actually. But Kami was written, the first draft was written through 2011. And it originally started as a NaNoWriMo project. From the previous year, in fact. Yeah, so my first... Yeah, I'm sorry, I'm just recording, Joey. My first year in Japan, so November 2010, wrote my first draft of Kami, and then I was revising it throughout all the next year. I was in Japan during the big Tohoku earthquake in 2011. I kind of took some inspiration from that while redrafting Kami, and I ultimately published it in September 2015.
Okay, so obviously you had a bunch of drafts going back and forth from Kami.
Yeah.
Was there drastic shifts when you went from like your first draft to your second draft, or was it just, I've got my basic story here, I'm just gonna kind of tweak how it comes out?
The major tweak that happened, apart from the usual tidying up and things like that, was when I originally wrote Kami, it was to be set in the modern day Japan. I mean, it was set in the countryside, and it involves, Kami, spirits, gods, things like that, but it was modern Japan, so there were cars, there were cell phones, trains, and there were references to modern culture, things like that. But when I reworked Kami, it just didn't seem to fit, because you've got this kind of mythical element of gods and spirits, and you've got people with cell phones and things like that. So I wanted to rework it so it wasn't old, but it was like timeless. So you deliberately avoid any mention of technology and such. I think a car makes an appearance once, and I think they go to an arts and crafts shop, but I deliberately avoided trying to make any reference to anything overtly modern, because I was really keen on trying to get this idea of timelessness into the book. So it didn't kind of lend itself to being in any particular time period. So, was it set in the 60s? Was it set in the modern day? When was it set? It's deliberately vague in that regard. That's what I was trying to get out of the redraft.
Okay, so what is the story of Kami, if you don't mind me asking? Just a brief summary, give as much as you want without giving too much away.
Sure. So Kami is the story of a jaded elementary school student called Hayato, and he lives in this kind of, well, in his opinion, this backwater one-horse town, Namerikawa. That's a bit of a mouthful. That's named after roughly named after the town that I used to live in here in Japan. And he's a little bit tired of this town. He's tired of the old traditions. He's tired of the festival year in, year out being the same thing over and over again. He's a very jaded 12-year-old, and he wants to do something different for this festival. He wants to bring the town to life, give it a bit of pizzazz. And unfortunately, his plan backfires, and he ends up destroying the festival. The town are very angry, and they want to see him punished in the traditional manner. And the traditional punishment for such things is sending the boy on a rite of passage. He needs to go on a hike of penance up to the local mountain, Mount Kasagama, while carrying the box from the inner sanctum of the shrine, up to the mountain, pray for forgiveness, and hope that the kami will return to the town. However, when he's on his way to the mountain, the gods decide to come and meet him, and from then on, he realizes that things aren't quite what they seem The reason as to why the festival got destroyed isn't as simple as it seems, and it all just swells in from there to being some kind of big godly conspiracy.
Nice. So,
Yeah.
obviously this has all Japanese history from there, so did you learn about that in school, or did you just pick that up from being in Japan?
I partly picked it up from being in Japan, and I partly picked it up from actively researching for the book. I remember way back when I was a kid, like last year of elementary school, I was inspired by watching the play The Mikado, and that was actually perhaps the first time I ever really properly heard about Japan. And I was reading some kind of traditional folk tale about climbing Mount Fuji, which to this day I cannot find. But that was my first kind of kick-off into Japanese culture. But yeah, I know I wanted to make a book that was set in Japan, and yet I couldn't quite kick off the idea for it. I couldn't kind of grasp a possible concept that I was happy with in terms of writing a book set in Japan. But again, I was inspired by another set of books that I'm really keen of, which is the Bartimaeus trilogy by Jonathan Stroud. And one of my favourite concepts of those books is that of demons. That's Daemon, and the whole idea of summoning these ethereal beings into the real world, and they have certain powers and abilities, and you can use them to do your own bidding as long as you follow the rules, otherwise they'll destroy you. And what I ended up doing was I married this idea of, again, my concept of wanting to write a book in Japan, and taking this idea of ethereal beings which can do certain things. And I thought, okay, rather than demons, what if it was kami? What if the spirits were able to do these things in the real world? And then I just started doing some mental gymnastics, some reconfiguring, and I ended up with the end result, which was kami eventually.
All
and then
right.
I did the research. Yeah.
Yeah. So then, with these, one of the things that I know I'm having a little trouble with as well. You say you've got these special almost powers of these, like what these spirits can and can't do as long as they follow certain rules.
Yes.
Did you have trouble explaining that? Because I know one of the things that I've noticed between like good and bad storytelling is finding that balance between fully explaining something to your audience and finding the balance between that and basically just punching them in the face with this is what you need to know, and just hitting them over and over again with what you need to know. So was that the two-part question with that? So that's the first part, and then the second part would be, did you go with more of a description on how these, like when they would use their powers, did you describe how they were using their powers, or would you just say they used this power and this happened?
That's a great question. I think for me, Joey, the problem I have with when I create these other non-human beings is like very clearly setting the limits on what they can and can't do. Because if anything, if you don't set those limits, then not only is the audience going to question, oh, well, why can't he just do that? Why can't they just, fight their way out of that? And then you get something like cinema scenes on your back. What I wanted to do was very clearly lay out, okay, so this is what this being can and can't do because of A, B, C. Kami A can do this because of reason X. Which is why when I created my cast of Kami, I assigned them certain elements. Technically speaking, Kami, in the literal sense of Japanese culture, don't really work like this. But, for example, the main Kami, Fujin, is the Kami of air. So immediately when the audience learn that he's the Kami of air, they already get these expectations of what Fujin should be good and bad at. So he's very good at manipulating the wind, He's good at moving through the sky at speed. Perhaps he can fly, things like that. But maybe something like rock or earth would kind of get the better of him. It's like Pokemon fight types, yeah. And like maybe you have a Kami who's like fire, so he's very good with fire, maybe some lightning thrown in. But maybe he's got a bit of a temper. Maybe he's overwhelmed with water or something like that. So you kind of play to those expectations in some ways, and you take advantage of that by immediately tying them into the audience's immediate expectations of what something should and shouldn't be. So that's what I was trying to do.
Okay, so I do like that. You mentioned a Kami of fire is also really easy to anger. I like how you can associate their power with their personality.
Yeah.
I think that's a really cool thing. So when you did, obviously you have to have the Kamis using their power. You can't just tease it for your audience and then not have them use it. So the second part of the question is, when you talked about them using the power, did you go into full scene detail of everything that was happening so that your audience has a full picture? Or did you kind of just lightly describe it and have your audience fill in the blank?
The first, as I'm sure we all know, I really wanted to avoid, front-loading the audience, the reader, with a load of description when Fujin first turns up to Hayato and says, "Hi, I'm a Kami. Here's my CV and here's my job description. Here you go." What I wanted to do was see it through the eyes of Hayato, and obviously because he's a 12-year-old boy first seeing the powers of effectively a god for the first time, he's going to be overwhelmed. So the audience likewise should be equally dumbfounded and overwhelmed. So the first fight you see isn't explained at all. It's meant to be deliberately bewildering, this fight between Fujin and the Kami of Fire. And then ultimately, when you have Hayato and Fujin talk, and they kind of introduce each other and Fujin explains who he is, not everything needs to be explained because they've already seen an example of it. And we're able to thread throughout the following chapters some of the other things as well. And not everything needs to be explained. One of the little things that is threaded throughout the whole book is that Fujin, well, he's able to shapeshift. He's able to change to different forms. However, throughout all of his forms, he constantly has a scar running from his eye to his cheek. And he never explains why. And Hayato doesn't ask until near the end. That's one of the little plot twists that comes up. So not everything needs to be explained. It's just a case of, does it need to be explained now? Does it add value to the story if I do explain it? And if it doesn't, it can wait, or it doesn't need to be included in the first place.
Mm-hmm. Well, I think I would say with yours, your book doesn't really revolve around the powers that they can do and everything like that. It's more about the characters, and you can kind of imply what they can do. Would you say that your rule about not explaining the fight scenes or anything like that for other writers who maybe are writing something more action-based or something like that, would describing the fight scenes probably be a little more crucial on their part?
Yeah, I mean, if your main character is partaking in the central fight scenes, the central action scenes, definitely, because the story is revolving around them, and you need to make those parameters clear. Because, for example, in Tick, he gets into a number of fights. However, he's a cat, and those limits need to be clear. But in the case of Kami, Hayato is the central character, and Fujin is the story revolves around whatever Hayato is seeing and doing. The elements of the Kami, they're just there to aid and push the story along. So having clearly defined boundaries is still important. However, unless it's something of a case of Fujin, you just discovered an amazing power just now that automatically saves the day and saves Hayato. then that would be a problem, because that kind of is an unfair get-off-the-jail-free card for the main character. However, as long as the main character, his hero's journey, his development still feels honest, it doesn't feel like they're using this great god, this great powerful character to cheat their way through their trials and tribulations. As long as that doesn't happen, then I think the story still follows and it still makes sense.
Alrighty. Now from the writing part to the publishing part, was this another Kickstarter self-funded, or was this more you publishing it yourself?
This one was just me publishing it on my own. Kami is in many respects a bit more of a smaller scale project, really. Whereas Kami had the full fanfare and had all my first book, and I had all the videos and trailers and all of the Kickstarter backing behind me. Kami was a bit more personal, partly because of the time I wrote it, and also the book itself lends itself to being something that is a bit smaller, I think, because it's a shorter book than Tick, by a fair margin. It's aimed at a younger audience than Tick as well, and also, quite frankly, the time I was actually putting together all of the advertising material for Kami, I did make some videos and some extra short stories and some promotional material. That was through August, and getting it ready for September 1st. And that didn't work out, Joe, because quite frankly, August in Japan is just burning hell. It is so hot. Right now, I'm sitting here, it's 11:15 at night, and it's still over 30 degrees C. I don't know what that is in Fahrenheit. I think it's about 204. But
somewhere around there.
It's crazy, and it really made it difficult to be productive, because you come home from work and you've just got no energy left. And that's kind of the reason why my third book is going to be published in November, because the temperature will be cooler in October and September time, easier to concentrate, easier to put some more stuff together, and it just gives me a bit more time as well. So that's why Kami is a little bit more of a small scale project, I think.
Speaking of your third book coming out, can you tell us a little bit about this new book of yours? I believe it's called Exit. Yes.
Following my strange fascination for one-word, four-letter titles. That's a complete accident, I promise. Exit. This one, this is a good one. This is a big one. It's a very big book. Literally, it's longer than Tick. It's about 120,000 words, and which I was actually considering splitting it into two, but I'm going to make it into one epic. Anyway, so Exit. Exit is the Hunger Games meets Wall-E meets the city of Ember. It is the story of a young girl called Kit, who lived with her mother until she was kidnapped, age 10. Her mother was kidnapped, and she spent the past 3 years growing up alone, trying to figure out what happened to her mother. The clinch is she lives in this city called Utopolis. And Utopolis is a city that is set under a dome. So I suppose you've got a bit of Stephen King's Under the Dome thrown in there as well. But it's a concrete dome. Like, the city exists in its own hermetic bubble. And it's all she's known all her life. However, when she starts digging into the possible reasons as to why her mother and other people are being kidnapped, the inevitable question comes up. If all these people are being kidnapped, and this city has very clear defined limits, where are they being hidden? They can't be being hidden, they've been taken somewhere, so this city must have an exit. So the obvious question that comes up from that is, where is the exit? And that is the most dangerous question that a person in Utopolis can ask, asking where the exit is. So she really kicks up a massive conspiracy of governmental forces there, and it all just kicks off from that point.
It does sound very interesting, actually. Did you have fun? Is the book completed yet, or are we still going?
Yep, it's finished. I am currently giving it a final polish right now. and getting it ready for November.
Awesome. So, was the process of describing the city, setting the limits, did you set like a geography of where everything is, how things look, everything like that before you wrote? Before you described it?
You know what, Joey? When I was younger and I was working on my vegan project, I was a big fan of making maps and carefully detailing everything out to the finest degree of where everything would be and geography and everything like that. But for Exit, I have a decent idea of where everything is. I know the different names of districts, such as the Pleasure Realm, Fortuity Square, the Edge, the Authority, the Upload, things like that. But I don't have a very, I don't have a set map. I haven't created a map for it. I should have done in retrospect, but I have a rough idea of it because my kind of new-ish philosophy when it comes to things like that is maps are fun. Maps are cool. I do actually enjoy opening a book at the beginning and seeing the map. I'm like, oh, I can't wait to follow this character to all these different places on this map. But sometimes it can be a bit of a burden as well, partly because you can sometimes feel restrained by the map because by nature you create it at the beginning of the process. And also, my feeling is if you have created this world, if you have created this physical area within the imagination and you need a map to describe where everything is, it's probably too complicated to begin with. So my new approach when it comes to books like Exit, which is just basically a city, is I want it to be vivid enough based on the words on the page. A book like Vegan or an epic fantasy, certainly definitely maps are a big thing, but not for Exit, I think.
Mm-hmm. I would just say like the one thing that if I was writing a book like that would concern me is that talking about going from one district, taking a left and ending up in this district, and then later on in the series you kind of make that same connection maybe from one district to another, and instead you end up in a different district and you're confusing perhaps your audience about where everything is. But I mean, you don't necessarily need a map to kind of figure that out. You just need a way to vividly let the audience know where you need to be, where you are, and where you need to be.
Yeah, absolutely. It's not beyond the realms of possibility, actually, Joey. I was considering the other day when I finally get Exit finished and I start putting together proper promo material for it, I was thinking, maybe I can make a map. So I would like to make a map for it. And you're right, one of my biggest terrors is getting the geography of things right, where suddenly this building moved to the other side of the city for no reason. I'm terrible at spotting those kind of things. So maybe in the future I would put a map together for it, definitely.
Mm-hmm. Another thing about something that's a little more set in a certain area. Like obviously Tick doesn't necessarily revolve around exploring an area. Kami is more about the hero's journey, but this Exit book kind of inspires a little bit more about working your way around the area and trying to use you're obviously in conflict, but the area that you're in is going to be playing a bigger role than what the other two books were. So have you thought of getting like a fan art or like an art piece on about the city? Just have someone like describe what they think the city is through like a painting or something like that?
Oh my goodness, I would love that. I have such a vivid image of what Kit looks like, what Utopolis looks like, or Fortuity Square. Oh, I would love that, Joey. Get a proper professionally made artist's piece.
I mean that sounds like an awesome front or back cover on a hard copy right there. Yeah.
I mean, what I do right now, you've seen the front cover for Tick and the cover. the cover for Tick was just a stock photo I found, and and Kami is my photo. That shrine is near Hiroshima, and the one for Exit is just going to be a moodily lit exit sign. But yeah, proper concept art for a front cover and a back cover would be absolutely fantastic. Definitely.
All right. I would think, are you trying to make this a big release like Tick was, or are you trying to keep this a little closer to and more personal like Kami?
This one's a big one, I think. I mean, maybe this is my fault, but my approach to the book's release is kind of tied hand in hand with the scale of the book, and Exit is the biggest one we get, both in terms of the themes covered in the book and just the literal size and scale of it. So yeah, probably more so than Tick. I hope time works out that I'm able to give it a suitable build-up, hence why I pushed it back to November as opposed to my traditional September 1st. Otherwise, I'd be releasing it next Thursday. But yeah, I'm hoping that it can have a nice big release, maybe capture the Christmas market, and yeah, perhaps I'll do some stuff after the release as well, just to keep it pushing through until Christmas and New Year. That's what I'm hoping.
I would think if you are going to have this big release, I would think finding just like an artist to kind of draw that would actually be a really good idea just for your cover. There's obviously, I'm guessing you can find an artist somewhere in Japan. I know it's a rare concept to have people drawing things in Japan, but
yeah.
I think that would actually be really cool because from how you described it, it looks like it's going to be this epic kind of city, and you've obviously got the images clearly in your head. So I think maybe not necessarily a map to help people out with, but just like an artist's renditioning of how the city kind of looks might help the description out a little bit as well.
I'm going to write that down. I always keep a notepad near me, Joey. Artist, yes, definitely. If there's any artists listening to this, you find my way to my channel and send me a message. I'll hunt you down. No, you'll hunt me down.
Alrighty. Well, that should bring us to the final part. Your YouTube channel. You've been talking about it for a little while. You obviously have your big book releases coming up. I did see the trailer for Exit coming out.
Yes.
Is there anything else you do on that YouTube channel?
Yes, there is. So apart from a place where I'm able to promote my own work, I have a couple of, four actually. I have four series of different things I do on that channel. The main flagship title on my channel is Story Time, where I make like a short story, something new or something from the old archive, and I do an audiobook recording of it. The other ones I do are also off the shelf, where I talk about my tips and advice for writing, what constitutes good storytelling, and just the general writing and reading marketplace, really. Showtime is kind of that's my review series, I suppose. It started off just being reviewing books, but then I branched it out into anything that has a story. So it could be a movie, or it could be a video game, or it can even be a concept album. However, I approach the review by focusing purely on storytelling. Not interested in acting talent, and not interested in the quality of CGI. I focus purely on storytelling. So if a movie or a book has a quality story, I'll mention it. If there's things that I think weren't as good or they should have been better, then I'll mention it, and I'll also give my own alternative ideas. And also, I do my A to Z of Japan on there as well, which is essentially an audio reading of my blog posts from the blog of the same name. And I just move alphabetically through different topics. So it'll be like A is for anime, B is for blood type, because I love blood type here. C is for konbini, and I just go through the whole doing these very kind of light-hearted, very easygoing, casual blog posts, really. I do those videos every Sunday with the occasional event video now and then. But once every Sunday.
Alrighty. Now, if there's anyone else who wants to ask you a question or about publishing or about writing, how's the easiest way to get in contact with you to ask you a question about that?
Well, there's plenty. You can simply drop me a comment on any of my YouTube videos. I have my YouTube comment alerts set, so I'm able to see any comments that come through. You can also go to my website. Again, you can find the links to that website in any of my video descriptions, and there is a contact button where you can send me an email, and I've also got my Twitter as well. Again, you can find my Twitter, my Facebook, all of the social media bits and bobs are always in each of my video descriptions, and you can contact me whichever way suits you best.
Well, we'll try to get that in. I'll try to remember to put that in the description along with your YouTube channel as well.
Awesome.
So I think that's about an hour or so. Do you have anything else that you'd like to plug in right here before we go into a final part?
I just want to maybe just add to the fact, Joey, I really appreciate firstly, thank you very much for having me here. It's my first proper interview, so apologies if I'm a little bit nervous, because, we Brits, we talk quite fast at the best of times, so apologize if I've mumbled a little bit. Joey introduced me as being a published author and kind of built me up. I really appreciate that. I feel very good for it. It's not as difficult as it can be made out to be. It's a lot of hard work. Repeat after me, writing is hard work, everyone. Actually getting a book published, getting your name out there, in this day and age is not as hard as one would think, because myself, Joey, a smattering of other small YouTube channels out there, there's new ways to make contact with people, build an audience, build a community, and if that's the route you want to go, you want to go down the YouTube and your Patreon and your online route, go for it. But you can also use that to build your portfolio up, where you can eventually get the notice of a traditional agent. So there's more routes than there need to be. So take heart to that. That would be my advice to any of the aspiring writers out there.
Alrighty. At the end of most podcasts, we usually do a little contest, but since we've got you here, we're going to ask you 3 things, and these questions are obviously all 3 of your books are designed for the book medium. But if you didn't have these stories in a book, what other medium do you think they would come out best in? You know, a TV show, an anime, a movie, a comic book, just like a folk tale. What would you think they'd come out best as? So, what do you think Tick would come out best as?
Ooh, that's a great question. I would love to see Tick come out given the full silver screen treatment, the full Hollywood do, because, firstly, it involves talking cats, so you're going to need some CGI thrown in there. So I'm thinking full-on Hollywood, Michael Bay. Well, not Michael Bay. I don't want my cats exploding. Just given the full Hollywood do, I think.
Would you want that to be...
For Cammy, I've got to go anime, of course. But if you want to get... Yeah, go ahead.
Oh, sorry, I was going to go for Tick first. Would you want that as when you go with the Hollywood, would you want that to be like a Pixar movie almost?
Ooh, that would be nice. Yeah. See, I'm trying to think of an equivalent, really. There's a movie that's come out in Japan recently, and that actually does have talking cats. I forget the name of it. Namai Ikai, damn it, something like that.
I mean, there's obviously the Pets movie that came out, and then
Yes.
there was another one with like Zootopia that had the talking animals. So obviously, you could go something along that route as well.
Yeah, I feel like it would be more Zootopia-esque than Secret Life of Pets-esque because Tick is it's got more adult themes to it. So I feel like it would lend itself to a more realistic style, while still having that cartoony element that Disney is so good at. Whereas Secret Life of Pets, I mean, I haven't seen it myself, I've just seen the awesome trailers, but that seems definitely more towards being more cartoony and more whimsical. So yeah, I would love it if John Lasseter approached. If John is listening, hi John, you know where my contacts are.
Alrighty, so then you said for Kami, you wanted something along the lines of an anime.
Yeah.
Would that be like like the manga turned anime, or would that just be like an anime movie, or like a 2, 3, 4-parter? How would you want that to go about?
Do you know what I would love it like a Ghibli style? I think because of the reason I mentioned earlier, which is I want Kami to be like timeless and not lend itself to a certain time period. I mean, when you look at any movie of the Ghibli stable, you've got movies like Totoro, you've got the Laputas, you've got the Howl's Moving Castle. That you can kind of get a rough idea of what time period it's supposed to be, but not, because there's all these fantastical whimsical elements. And that I just think it would work great with Kami. When I was writing Kami, some parts of it, I just had this very vision of it being a Ghibli style. So I feel like it's meant to be, really.
Yeah, the Studio Ghibli is definitely something that's surprisingly well known in the West. So I'm guessing a lot of people would understand that. So now the book Exit that we're going to have to wait till November to read, what kind of style would that be under? Obviously, all we've got to go by is what you've given us so far. So how would you want that to come out?
Ooh, that's a good one.
I do have.
Do you know what?
I have what I would think would be an awesome idea. Sorry to cut you out. Would a Netflix series be an awesome idea or not? Like, there's obviously like those superhero like Arrow and the Flash, Daredevil coming out on the Netflix series, where you can kind of obviously it's a big book, but maybe it's like only enough to cover a season. So with like a Netflix series, you could go more in depth about these awesome areas, some other characters, stuff like that. Maybe the specific characters that before they go get kidnapped, as like stories to go in for different episodes. Would that be a fair medium to transform that into? Wow,
Joey, you are fantastic at this game. That's a brilliant idea. Yeah, definitely. Not just for the reasons you mentioned, Joey. Those are fantastic reasons, but also the book itself. There's constant peaks and troughs, and there's like every other chapter there's a moment where it lends itself to being like the end of an episode. It's not a constant smooth build, because the nature of a conspiracy-based novel is unearthing new revelations and twists and disciplines, and this character does this, turns traitor, and blah blah blah. I hope that's it. So yeah, that whole nature of there being like new revelations and twists would definitely lend itself to being a TV series. That's a brilliant idea.
Alrighty, so that's it for our little contest. I want to thank PJ again for being here. Certainly a biggest interview we've done.
Wow.
I mean, obviously the only other interviews we've really done are those 2 minutes of me and Doruk, but hopefully we'll see Exit have a big enough popularity that it does get its own like Hulu or Netflix series. I would love to have Doruk on the show later talking about each episode. So, best of luck to you, man.
I would want that. And if you would have me back again, I would be more than happy to come back.
Oh yeah, we'll definitely have to get you on the channel again for another podcast soon. Get you in here with Doruk, and talk about some more stuff. So that's it from us, guys. Make sure you like and subscribe. Comment below if you have any questions or if you want to submit anything for the show to be reviewed. And we'll see you guys in the next podcast. See you guys later.
Thank you very much.
Hey, getting some writing done there, buddy?
Yeah, setting up in public so everybody can watch me type my big screenplay.
Me too. All real writers need to be seen writing, otherwise what's the point, right?
You should totally write that down.
Okay, will you watch me?